So my background, currently I work on the associate director for Office of New Student Programs. I'm also the program director for Veteran and Military Services. Um, I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran myself, active duty from 1998 to 1992, and then active reserve from 92 to 94. The interesting thing about the 92 to 94 part was this was when I was actually a student at Indiana University. So I've got both the student veteran experience and kind of serving active reserve while I was a student as well. Um, I was almost deployed while active reserve, so I kind of had that fear as well of being on the kind of deployment roster and maybe going to Kosovo at the time, maybe not. We didn't know actually until we got to base and came back, so that's an interesting story. About 25 years in student affairs as a professional, which it seems weird, but yeah, that's about true. Um, I went to school at Indiana University. I worked at Arkansas State as in student affairs for 2 years. I worked at the dreaded Ohio State University for about 6 years before coming to Michigan. And my wife says I traded up. So I'm absolutely where I want to be, and I know where my loyalties lie. Although you always love your home school, Indiana University is my alum and always close to my heart. I worked on the B-1 bomber, which is that top picture you see loading bombs on the B-1, and the bottom one I loaded all sorts of bullets and bombs and weapons and missiles and everything else on the A-10, which is that plane down below. I'm going to try this and see if it works. Please chime in if you don't have sound, we'll redo it. I'm going to see if this comes up for you. You see, I don't think you see anything. Wait a second. Let me see if I can share this real quick too. Just a second. Let me see if I can share that screen. If not, we'll redo. If that works. There we go. Can you hear any of it? Wait. Can you hear this at all? Anybody hearing that?
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything.
Okay, you can't hear it. All right, so that didn't work. There's a great video online if you want to look at it. I wish we could show it. I couldn't get it to work through the normal PowerPoint stuff because my PowerPoint's a little old, I think. Um, if you look up like veteran, it's actually on a website. So the easiest way actually is find it on a website. So if everyone wants to take down the information, I can send this to you too. It's vets.umich.edu, which is our website. You go on our website and look at faculty staff over there in the corner resources. The video is right on that page. I encourage you to look at it. It's a really well done video. And it's just from our students, which I always like kind of showing our student experience and what they say. They're always our best, no matter what part of campus you are, and no matter what department you are, our students are always our best spokesman. So it's about a 6-minute video kind of showing our students really talking about their classroom experience, talking about some of the stuff they experienced in class, some of the challenges, some of the way they like the university, but it's not our sell video of why people should come to Michigan. It's really for our faculty and staff from our student experience to show why what student veterans are, kind of what they experience in classroom and how you can help. So a little bit about our students on the Ann Arbor campus. The number of military connected students we have is about 738. Sorry, that's not a comma for thousands. About 386 of those are undergraduates. So definitely a much bigger, and these are, when I say military connected, I'm talking about veterans, active duty, National Guard, and also dependents. Those are folks who have family members who are, active military or National Guard Reserve. So that's all of them lumped together. We have number of veterans active, so that's the veterans, active duty, National Guard Reserves, about 371. About 136 of those are undergraduates. So you can see that we have a much larger graduate population than we have undergrad population. Number of students receiving VA benefits right now is about 348. That's a total of that 300. That's a total from that 738 one So both dependents and those serving or who have served get some VA benefits. So that's the total. So about half of our folks who could be eligible actually receive benefits, a little bit over half. Again, total student population. So if you look at our students versus the total student population, we're an extremely small slice of the pie. I think we're an important slice of the pie, but still the numbers are relatively small. So if you're wondering in an academic unit why you have 2, 3, 4, 5, veterans in a program, that's the reason why, because we're still a small sliver of our bigger population. Nationwide, we've got about 18.2 million veterans living in the U.S. About 3.5 million of those veterans are post 9/11 or later, so our current generation. Oops, wrong forward. Oh, the wrong computer. Sorry. Veteran and military services. I am the point of contact. So what we do at the university, I'm the point of contact for prospective and current students. So folks who are looking to come into the university kind of talk to me, current students, and I've got a lot of business lately on this. They talk to me about all things veteran related, from the VA and benefits to how the school handles veteran students to faculty and staff members calling me about deployment and whether a student would be qualified for deployment. I get a lot of those kind of questions. Prospective students, I do get graduate students calling me every once in a while. Usually we talk a little about benefits. Undergrads, since I work in OEM, which is the Office of Enrollment Management, I can kind of talk to them, kind of work their way through about the undergrad process of enrollment and admission. Graduate students I send to the department, since there's so many programs and they kind of all work under their own rules. So I don't answer a ton of prospective student questions about grad programs. I will talk to them a lot about benefits too and how they can use their benefits, especially if you're looking at prospective students on the graduate level. You have to watch out for the benefits and how it interacts with scholarships for grad programs. A lot of grad program scholarships or internships or the working while you go to school kind of tuition thing is only tuition based and it's not refunded to the students. Those have an impact. Those kind of grants or awards from the department have an impact on the VA because they have to pay. The VA wants to be last payer in those kind of situations. So your grant money you award to a nursing student, for example, could just all it may do instead of helping the student is make the VA pay a lot less. So definitely talk to us or have the student talk to us if they're trying to use VA money and those kind of departmental scholarships, because we want to make sure they know at least what's going on before they get kind of knee-deep. We do programs and events. Not a lot lately because of the coronavirus. We're all stuck at home. But usually around this time, we're doing some programs and events. Specifically, we're going to do some stuff on graduation. And we do have some events in the fall kind of coming up to campus. What's it like to be on campus? What can vets expect? We do some social stuff for grad students. We support student organizations can get mini grants through us and kind of help fund their activities if they're doing stuff for veterans and military. So we do a lot of that kind of work. One of our big things is our peer mentoring program, where we allow we pair undergraduate students up with a peer mentor and help them kind of get adjusted to campus. Again, we do a lot of workshops, kind of again that initial coming to campus and what that could be like. We're trying to do some and getting some more ideas for the graduate students and what they would like, specifically around their own department. Sometimes that would be nice. We usually have the Warrior Scholar program on campus, which is a summer program for undergrads looking to come to school. We have our website, which is designed, specifically designed for students actually both looking at the campus and seeing if they want to come to campus and what the veteran space looks like at U of M, and also our students needing some kind of forms and information about VA benefits and other benefits. Again, I mentioned the student organizational assistants. My office is separate from the certifying official who does the benefits, although we're absolutely in close contact with them. We have our Council on Student Veterans, which is a lot of organizations, a lot of offices on campus that touch upon the veteran experience. and can help our vets kind of navigate the campus. Also, if they run into problems and hiccups, we have a lot of folks that we have some really close contact with that can help out on certain situations, including the certifying official, financial aid, CAPS, of course. Dean of Students Dean of Students has been wonderful, especially when we're talking deployments and other things. We talked a little bit about the web. We are a Vet Success on Campus. We host a vocational rehabilitation counselor from the VA on campus one time a week. What that does is gives us insights and kind of a person on the inside to VA benefits. So John, who's our voc rehab counselor on campus, knows the VA, kind of knows where to send students, and can kind of help with those problem-solving situations we have. Knows the bureaucracy, so knows what lever to push when and who to go see where, but also can help our students navigate a pretty complex system. So we're happy to be in partnership with the VA benefits and the VA hospital. We have a contact from the hospital, Brittany Tyrell, who is a social worker, and she can help navigate, get people signed up for VA healthcare, which every veteran should be. Also can help them navigate the system. Both have been crucial in this past few weeks, kind of talking about how the VA is responding to the coronavirus. And now that we have the coronavirus situation, we are actually on a webinar with both of our VA partners once a week, just to get updates and make sure that we're all on the same page. We have close collaboration between the Depression Center and the Ann Arbor VA in researching and identifying PTSD and TBI treatments. That's not my office, but that's the university at large, especially through the Depression Center and IMSPAN. We have close contact with other Michigan public colleges and universities through our consortium of Michigan veteran educators, which we are a founding member. We're also a big part of the veterans community and a breakout group of veteran liaison kind of officers like myself with the Big Ten consortium. We do in-state tuition. So all of your students who are both receiving GI Bill benefits and those who are not, if they are veterans or if they're a National Guard or Reserve or active duty, basically if they are or have worn the uniform in service to the U.S., they should be considered in-state students for the purposes of tuition. But they do need to register. They need to apply through the registrar's office for that in-state status for tuition. We do definitely for those who are receiving any kind of VA benefit, except for Chapter 35 right now. So Chapter 30, Chapter 31, we offer in-state tuition for those folks as well. For undergrads, they can get an extension if they run out of those benefits. That's not available since it's a waiver and somebody had to pay the bill. That's not as available for our graduate students.
Hey, Phil.
Let me see, where am I? Okay, again with the Fry scholarship too as well. They get in-state tuition. We do priority registration for veteran and military members. So folks who we know about, again, self-identified. So folks who have self-identified that they're veterans and military members, meaning active duty, National Guard, Reserve, they get priority registration through our system.
Hey, Phil.
Yes.
Quick question for the graduate students specifically, are there reasons why they would not be considered in state?
I'm thinking only family members. So if they are again active duty, National Guard, Reserve, or veteran, they should be in-state students. If they are not in-state students as of now, that's either they haven't applied or we don't have them on our radar. Because that should happen. Even if you're National Guard, so there's some loopholes in this, but they're loopholes. Even if you just joined the National Guard and you're serving out of a base in Ohio, you should be able to get in-state status. The only reserve kind of technical reservists who don't get it are ROTC students. They are technically reservists. But they weren't part of the bigger bill that we did through the regents. and so they're not included in that thing. So the only ones I guess that would technically be excluded is the ROTC members, but they haven't served yet, really. Even folks who are, weirdly enough, folks who are former cadets at one of the military academies who drop out for a number of reasons, health reasons, injury reasons, they still get our in-state student status because they get a nice letter from the military says that they are on reserve status, inactive reserve status, because they've actually been in a military academy. So yeah, everybody should get that in-state status. If they don't, have them come and see us, and they can apply for it.
Thank you.
Family members only get it if they're using one of the benefits. So if they're using post 9/11 GI Bill or transferred post 9/11 GI Bill status or the David Fry Scholarship, they would get it. Members who have family members right now, like parents, basically, who are working inside the state of Michigan as a National Guard reservist or active duty, they should qualify for it too. But send them over to the residency office. Cool. Any other questions on that? Did that answer the person's question?
I think so. Thank you so much.
All right. We are also a founding member of the Student Veterans of America, which has over 1,000 chapters nationwide. So it really actually did start here with us and 3 other campuses. The first SVA national president was actually a student from the University of Michigan, Derek Blumke. So we are kind of proud of that too. Talked about educational benefits. Chapter 31 is voc rehab. That's for folks who have at least a 10% disability rating through the VA. It's a really good plan if people can get on it. They pay for all tuition. They pay that housing stipend. If they still have some GI Bill money left over, they'll pay full housing stipend on that. They also get a laptop, a nice, beautiful new laptop from the VA, and they get anything paid for that's basically, fee related or materials related. So if they need they have to buy, for instance, if they have to buy a lab coat, the VA will fund the purchase of the lab coat. They have to buy testing equipment for something, they will fund that. They will even fund testing for if you're taking your MCAT, if you're applying to law school. They will fund, any kind of exam. They will fund that if it's needed for your vocation, your job, or needed for school. So it's a really premium program. I've listed these programs kind of on the most bang for their buck kind of thing. So the top is absolutely voc rehab. The second one is post 9/11 GI Bill, which is what most people have heard of. That's where they get paid tuition. So all tuition, if they're 100%, all tuition gets paid for, which is kind of a misnomer. People ask about that. Whether you're in grad school, undergrad, med school, law school, I have people on the MBA program, right, racking up, tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars of tuition for the VA, and post 9/11 GI Bill and the voc rehab will pay all of that. So all tuition at all levels, since we are a public university. They also get about $1,900 in a monthly stipend to live on. And there's about $1,000 a year, depending on the program, $1,000 a year book stipend for them that at least offsets some of their books. The David Fry. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So would this also cover if a student needed compliance requirements for their education, like flu vaccine, whatever other immunizations?
It should be covered under voc rehab.
Okay.
They could talk to a voc rehab counselor. I would think that it would be covered.
Okay.
The VA, now if they have VA healthcare, the VA healthcare might want to do that through the VA. But if they have regular insurance or they have to pay copays or they have to pay for it offhand, the voc rehab program should cover all of that if it's needed for their job, to get their job, or to go to school. They will even do some stuff with internships. So if you're on an internship, voc rehab will pay for your monthly stipend. But they have to talk to a voc rehab counselor, so it's not all automatic. Post 9/11 GI Bill kind of covers certain things and it's automatic. Like if you are taking classes, they cover tuition. Voc Rehab is all about a discussion with your Voc Rehab counselor, and they have to approve everything that they're spending. So if they're in Voc Rehab, they need to check with their Voc Rehab person in advance before they get paid for any of that stuff. The David Fry Scholarship is basically the easiest way to explain it, and it's basically true, is it's the post 9/11 GI Bill for dependents of folks who are killed in action. So the David Fry Scholarship, if your parent dies on active duty, you can qualify for the David Fry Scholarship. And again, that's tuition, about $1,900 a month for BAH, about $1,000 book stipend. The old Montgomery GI Bill, still in use. It's still there. People still qualify it, and people still use it. Not a lot on our campus. It usually makes sense if you're doing online learning only, and then the classes were designed to be online, not our classes right now. It might make sense because it pays about $1,600 a month to students who are taking classes. So it's definitely not as good of a bang for their buck as the post 9/11 GI Bill. But for some students who are taking online classes, because post 9/11 GI Bill only pays like half BAH, some students use the old Montgomery GI Bill to use online classes and some like certification stuff, and some other work where they can just get the most bang for their buck that way. We have a state of Michigan National Guard scholarship, so anybody in National Guard or Reserves can get up to $6,000 a year in scholarship money just for serving in the National Guard, and not just, but serving in the National Guard for the state of Michigan. Realizes this is kind of weird times. I have a lot of folks who are getting deployed. We'll talk about that a little bit later. 1606 is the Montgomery GI Bill for selected reserves. So those are folks serving in the reserve component, not the National Guard. But reserve component of their selected branches, they can qualify for it's basically the old Montgomery GI Bill kind of shrunk down a little bit. So they get a little less payments, a little less money, but it's a check that goes directly to them. In Chapter 35 is Survivors and Dependents Educational Assistance. They don't get as much either. They get, I think it's about enough to cover about half the tuition. So they get about as much as the state of Michigan National Guard scholarships. They get the DEA is for folks who are 100% permanently disabled as a result of their service, or who have passed away as a result of their service, which is different. So it could be afterwards. So Agent Orange comes to mind. If they got cancer and they passed away, the survivor could be eligible for DEA. Or they survived an injury, they, the multiple concussive injuries or some other injuries that people have had in current service. They survived the service, they got out of the service, and a few years later, as a result of some of the injuries they had, they pass away, child, or they're 100% disabled because of their service, the child could get Chapter 35 tuition assistance. Cool, that's a lot. I'm sorry, that's a lot of stuff. Now, any question before we move into just a quick primer on military service? We can talk a little bit. We have about a half an hour, so I'll venture off script a little bit and talk a little bit about what we're facing now. We have been in talks with the VA. We have engaged our legislative liaison in Washington, D.C. to talk about changes that are needed for VA law. The VA is an executive branch off the executive branch, but all of their stuff, all of their what they do and what they give out to students and to veterans in healthcare, what the benefits they provide, earned benefits, of course, are all legislated by law. So all legislated by Congress, that has to be signed into law by the president. So any kind of course change, as you can imagine, for the VA, it's a large behemoth, huge, one of the biggest federal branches, one of the biggest executive kind of offices and agencies. And so it's a large ship to steer, and that they have this legislative mandate kind of thing. It makes them changes very hard. However, we have had some really necessary changes in the age of COVID-19. Moving to online classes presented a barrier. There was a question on whether they would get paid, again, for those traditional classes or their online courses, which would be significantly cheaper, about halved the amount of benefits they would get, both in the BAH housing, they still got to pay bills, and the tuition benefit would go down too. We have worked out that part legislatively. That was signed last, I think it was maybe either Monday or late last week. That was signed into law. So we're through that part. So most students who have a post 9/11 GI Bill right now, everything's going to be covered until we go back. The way we're reading the law, there's always interpretation. The way we're reading the law is they will continue on their normal course and getting paid normally for all of our courses, even though we've designated those remotely for the foreseeable future. Those courses will all get paid at the normal rate. Their BAH will get paid at the normal rate, even though they're doing this remotely. So this is until we return to normal operations. We're working on the voc rehab part of that. Voc rehab wasn't covered in the original bill. Somebody kind of dropped the legislative ball of putting another thing in. They did it, they thought everybody was post 9/11. They're not. And so we're correcting. We're in the process of working through the legislation to correct the voc rehab stuff. I saw the draft bill, and it does correct those kind of mistakes. So we're telling students right now, hold fast. It should be okay. All indications we get is that the Congress wants to do the right thing by this, and so is the president, and the VA is certainly willing to try to do what they can do, but they are mandated by legislation and they can't go against the law. So that they're ready and willing to do it as soon as Congress passes it. We're telling students to just hold where they are. We've got this. Their stuff right now for their benefits should continue unabated. We're also talking about to the VA locally what this means for our healthcare operations. As you know, or probably know, everybody and anybody is ramping up for COVID-19 and what this could mean for our healthcare in the country going forward, with inundations from ICU, ventilators, everything else. So the VA is no exception with VA healthcare. Supposedly they are able to open up VA healthcare for civilians if the stuff gets really, really bad. They are thinking about that, what that contingency plan would look like. They are also ramping up for cases for COVID-19 amongst our veteran population. You may or may not know the beyond our students, the Michigan has one of the older populations of veterans in the country. We have a ton of Vietnam age veterans. Remembering that we were kind of back in the 60s and early 70s, we were car manufacturers of the world, blue collar, lots of blue collar folks here, lots of blue collar folks whose son and daughters went off to the military during the Vietnam era and beyond. And so we got a fair number of older veterans in this state who are particularly vulnerable to this disease. The VA is basically shutting down any non-essential healthcare, doing anything they can do remotely right now through telemedicine, teleprescription kind of thing, and keeping office visits to the minimum. Their healthcare, the VA hospital is basically not letting, unless you have a thing from the doctor saying you need to go, or an emergency situation. You are not allowed to visit or stop in the VA VA hospital. It's basically shut down for walk-ins and definitely for visitors. They are under kind of an emergency situation. They are letting only people in who have end of life for visitors. So visiting people who are end of life situations. We are communicating that with our students. We are meeting weekly with the Ann Arbor VA Healthcare to kind of say what messages we need to get out to students immediately and sending that stuff out. We are in communications with VA benefits pretty closely too, seeing how that impacts our students and what benefits they can use and where they actually get this information and where to go through in this kind of era of resources being directed to the COVID-19 crisis. So it's a lot of little moving parts on our end. Somebody asked about deployments earlier. We ask that deployments go through our office too. We primarily put the thing of academics on the academic department. We have no university-wide law saying that thou must do X, Y, and Z. That's both a blessing and a curse. The curse is I have no place to send students saying this is our policy. Thou shalt do this. All academic departments must do this. Don't worry about it. We've got you covered. But the blessings are it allows the students to kind of tailor their academic program and kind of work with the department to find out what's best for them. We highly encourage, we've had no problems so far, we highly encourage academic departments to give the most flexibility possible. This came from a number of years ago from the provost on down, and I'm sure that the provost and the president would still consider to talk about that and to say that. To realize some of our students have to go off and serve, realizing this may cause some really hardships on their academic program, but to work with them to make those disruptions as less as possible. All students right now who, both on the grad and undergraduate level, who have to be deployed, when they come to our office, we will note that when they are deployed, we will actually enroll them and they have to withdraw. So say they have to withdraw from classes because it's mid-semester and they're going to be gone for 6 months. We know that may cause a disruption. We want to make that as light as possible. We will keep them enrolled. We have a non-credit, non-costing class, so tuition-free class that we will enroll them in to keep them on the enrolled list. Therefore, they should only have to work with their academic departments and really schedule their classes for the next academic section. We know this also causes problems with classes that are cohort-based and graduate. You have to take certain classes, especially in the graduate level, where you have to take certain classes certain semesters. So we encourage academic departments to work as closely as possible with students to make their disruption as less as possible. Whether that's doing some online learning, kind of makes it easier a little bit now to be deployed, especially if they can have a computer access or internet access, they can still complete some of their classwork. To scheduling stuff when they get back, taking an incomplete if they can, and working through that next semester to complete those courses. The least of all desirable one is a complete withdrawal from classes. We know that has to. We will work with students, and we ask academic departments to work with students on that tuition part of not dinging them for the tuition. Both the military, the DoD, will not refund us. Will not take the hit. Will not pay us for withdrawal. So they won't. They don't care. So if they deploy a student and they've already paid the tuition money, either on the tuition assistance kind of account through the DoD or the VA through the Veterans Administration, generally they want their money back, and they expect the schools to kind of say that they forgive the tuition. We have done that in the past. We hope academic departments can continue doing that too. If a student has to withdraw, the student shouldn't have to pay for stuff beyond their control for deployment. And realizing that the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard will not pick up that slack, and the VA sometimes does, but is really hesitant to pay schools for a partial semester. Is that cool? You have any other questions about the VA stuff or deployment? Is everybody okay so far? It's weird. I don't get to see anybody's faces, so I don't know if everybody's still on. Can everybody still hear me?
Hi, Philip. This is Kimberly. And yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your information about deployment is really helpful, not just from our Michigan student point of view, but for me personally that has a son-in-law that is going to be deployed soon and supporting my daughter. So from both sides, I really do appreciate this information.
Absolutely. Have them come and talk to us too. We realize we have some other resources available, CAPS, and other resources because the deployment is very stressful. And so we're an advocate through departments too. If somebody is being kind of not so cooperative, I've gotten on the phone with them and kind of explained the situation. It's very stressful for a student to be deployed. Not only we focus on the academic part. Not only on their academics, it's stressful. It's stressful in their life. We have to talk about childcare. We have to talk about paying bills while you're gone. We have to talk about who's looking after the house, who's looking after the pets. We have to talk about do you have a will in place just in case something happens? Do you have an advance directive in case you're hurt or in case your children are hurt? Who can actually take care of them and get them to the emergency room, get them taken care of? There's a lot of things to think about, and sometimes deployments happen within 48 hours. So students will have to get all those things together, plus their academic kind of ship squared away, right? In less than 48 hours, and that's what I faced when I was recalled. Basically, I was on the reserve unit, and I got a note from I got an email to my school address. First of all, I was like, how did you find me? But they did. And it was like report to your duty station within 48 hours, and we may deploy you to Kosovo from there. We will not know if we're deploying you until you actually get to base and get your orders. So I did not know that day when I went in on a Saturday. I didn't know whether I'd be gone for 6 months to a year, or I would be back in school on Monday. And so those kind of situations, and that has happened this year. So I have a couple of students right now who are on standby who are like, I may be having to leave. They got the letter saying, just to remind you, you have 72 hours from when we call you to be activated and be fully ready, in uniform, ready to go. So no, our students there's a few of them, especially National Guard, right now, who are on that situation of they don't know literally where they will be next week.
Right.
And so they could be activated, they could be at school.
Right. And I'm just as another point of view, just from a family point of view, are some of our students, they're newlyweds, or they've just had children and all this. And some deployments, there's some delays in deployments. And so my son-in-law was supposed to deploy in less than 15 days, and it's right now delayed, but he has no clue. They could decide to change that right away. And that's a lot of stress on the whole family, on my son-in-law is not in school, my daughter is, but so watching them go through that and listening to the content of what you're saying, there's so many layers in supporting those students. So
Absolutely.
Just as an FYI, especially right now when, like you said, they could get the notice that they have to leave now at any time.
And there's a lot of question about what we'll do with benefits, especially if they're gone for like next semester. They don't have to use their benefits consecutively. We understand that, and the VA understands that situations may arise where they're not able to go to school that next semester. The biggest thing is, I would tell, what we can do, what academic departments can do when we're talking about deployment, is have extreme understanding about the student and help them de-stress. So I was on the phone call with a person not knowing whether she's coming back next fall. She wanted to know if she should register or not. I said, absolutely register. If you cannot come back because her advanced training was delayed and they didn't know when it was going to happen. It's supposed to happen this summer. I said, go ahead and register. Go ahead and act like you're coming through in the fall, because we can withdraw you the first couple weeks of classes and nothing's going to happen. And so, as much, and her thing was just relief of hearing, we've got this part of it. Let's, focus on what you got to do for you. We're here to help you on the academic side of that. So knowing that they have somebody in their unit, sorry, I was reverting back to military. Knowing that they have somebody in their department that's kind of on their side. If they talk to an academic advisor or talk to a professor, GSI, from the undergrad GSI, knowing that every single component is like, you know what, maybe we don't know yet, but we are here for you and we will make this work, is a huge relief for them. So the more that we can help out, the better. The less hoops they have to jump over, the less stress they're going to have, the better they're going to be as students, and the better they're going to be through this deployment. Absolutely. Any other questions about that?
Are students, when they're deployed, are they given access to campus resources then that could be digital? So whether it be telehealth, utilizing career services, like are there still outreach from those other departments, do you know, or is that mostly funneled through your team?
A lot of it would be funneled through us, but no, do we have like links right now to telehealth or certain things? No, we don't. But again, that U of M Council on Student Veterans is a lot of folks on campus who would be impacted through that. So I know a lot of those folks personally. So, for instance, if they were, if for the Career Center, you mentioned the Career Center, so they wanted to use Career Center, get in touch with somebody, I would send them over to our contact in the Career Center, our liaison in the Career Center. And so she would be able to actually kind of help them out. So we would do a kind of a warm handoff saying, hey, here's this person in the Career Center, and she'll be able to kind of tell you a little bit about what you can do even remotely. I suspect, and I think, once we get done with this, we'll have a lot more resources as a university online for students that we'll be able to help and we'll be able to send folks to. So I think that's the good side of this crisis. I think is that we're going to have a lot more in the digital sphere than we've ever had before.
Absolutely. And now, do you have a list of who the contacts are that your team utilizes in the variety of offices that you could share, just as those point people should we want to refer students to those departments?
You can. I would love for them to get in contact with me too, so I can help them out as well. Some students don't know they don't know what they don't know. So if they can, if we're talking about deployment and class registration, I can talk to them a little bit about that before sending them over to the RO where they need to go for that. But certainly, yeah, we can share that out. Do we have anybody who wants to be on it from your program? I don't know. I think you're on. I think you're on the list. Jen, are you on my list? I think you're on my list.
I think I am.
Okay. Cool. Is there any other questions about that?
I had another question, not
Oh, yeah.
necessarily about deployment, but I know you mentioned earlier about a mentorship program for undergraduate students. I was curious as to whether or not there was something comparable for the graduate students.
No, and we thought about this over the years of just what here we go until we get back to that. Let's stop this. Here we go. Until the graduate students' experience is so diverse on campus. When grad students, undergrads, they kind of share this similar funnel, right? The application's sort of the same. They come on campus. It's on the fall. They get the same orientation. A lot of things is kind of standardized for undergraduate students. The schools and colleges sort of operate independently, but there's still some shared experiences. When we get in the graduate program, students have already had college, so they don't need kind of as much kind of hand-holding through the college experience. And B, it's all departmentally focused. So it's so like I remember my own grad school experience. I was and I stayed on the same campus, so I was still at IU. I remember how the campus seemed to shrink to one building. Like before, I was all over the campus. Doing stuff and going to class and experience campus life, and suddenly I was walking across the street to the School of Ed, and that was like my last 2 years of wearing this path between where I lived and the grad school. And I just know that the grad school experience becomes very, very departmental focused, and it's hard to kind of standardize something to say, hey, this is what we're gonna talk to grad students about X, Y, and Z. So if I hired somebody for a peer mentor for graduate school from engineering, they're really not going to know anything about the nursing experience or about the school of social work experience or about the school of business. And so it's been very hard for us because we have such a small number on campus to gain traction in that area. The grad schools who do have a significant portion usually develop that internally. So, for instance, the Ross School of Business has about 60 veterans on it, a huge component of that grad school component. And they have their own kind of mentoring program through their student group actually set up already. I wouldn't mind helping, and I certainly wouldn't mind setting it up, and even working with a way to formalize something. But we just haven't seen a way to have a system that works really well with that space.
Yeah, that's good to know
Veteran.
because I've got two veteran students or military students who have been able to find each other,
Yep.
um, who have also challenged our department with where are the opportunities to where we could have been connected sooner. And so now for our fall 20 admitted students, I'm being mindful of or do we have any military students that are coming? And if we do, seeing if there's a way to build in a community aspect at our face-to-face orientation in August, so that on day one, the first day they're on campus, they can meet one of our current students, they can connect with the other newer students in case they wanted that outlet, then it was there. I just wasn't sure if there was something more formal that came through your team, or if they were already told at one point when they matriculated or were admitted from you guys of, hey, did you know? Here are your colleagues. Um, I just wasn't really sure what that looked like.
We we are very, man, it's always that double-edged sword. We are very careful with sharing any kind of information.
Of course.
Just because they tell us that they're veterans doesn't mean that they want somebody else to know that they are veteran status. So a lot of them, especially our female veterans, it's not a salient identity. It's way back on the list. And B, a lot of times they don't, either because of trauma, military sexual trauma is a real thing. And a lot of them haven't had the best experience in the military. Some of the reasons maybe that's why they got out of the military. And so bringing it up kind of right away sometimes isn't what they are looking for. A lot of our students we have found, especially in the undergraduate level, graduate students may be a little bit different, but I even think even further, they may be further away from that military experience and just want to be a student and just maybe want to be a nurse, right? The nursing going through as a nursing student is definitely their biggest identity at this point. And the veteran component may be isolating too. So, and I'm not saying you do this, I'm just bringing this in as an example. Like if I'm a veteran and I'm in a classroom and somebody points out, hey, Phil, you're a veteran. That might not be something I wanted to share, or I was even thinking about. If somebody approached me right now and said, "Oh, you're a veteran," I'm like, "Oh yeah, I am." It's been a long time, but it's not my biggest identity right now, and I also may not want other people to know that because they may treat me differently. I have a story to tell on that. Do you want to hear this real quick before I go?
Hey, sure,
Awesome.
Phil.
Okay. This is a reason why. So this kind of and this is it talks a little bit about like the last half about how we approach folk and how we approach veterans. I had an uncle, my wife's uncle actually was a Marine Corps veteran in during right after Pearl Harbor. He was an infantry guy. He was also kind of he was a really slight, small guy, kind of bent over, and one of the nicest guys I've ever met. Had a very he came from Detroit, but had this kind of like New Jersey accent, so he's just kind of whispery, kind of like, "Hey Phil, how you doing? Good to see you." Nice guy. Found out he was Marine Corps. He told me a whole bunch of stuff that was just mind blowing. He saw lots of action, saw lots of combat, saw lots of terrible things. And shared with me about 9 hours worth of stories in about a span of about 3 years before he passed away. He was also on one of our panels we actually had. We brought him to campus at one. He told me once, he's telling me these stories, and I'm like, Uncle Hank, man, I've got to get you on video. This is awesome. You need to share this with your family. You need to make this known. He said, absolutely not. I said, why? You've witnessed history. So first of all, he goes, first of all, Phil, this is a long time ago. I'm 90. This is when I was like, 18, 19, 20. He goes, second of all, And this is the point that hit hard for me. He said, I've worked a long time to be the person you see in front of me with this nice sweater, kind of talking nice to you, thinking, nice guy. Everybody knows me as this nice guy, right? And now you know the other side of me. You know that I was Marine Corps and some of the worst stuff that's ever had used other stuff and stuff. But the worst stuff that ever happened, right? And he goes, and this is the point that I got was he goes, I don't want my family or friends or the people I know to see me as a killer. And that was a big line for him. And he didn't want people to see him other than what he presented, because civilians can take what you did in a weird way, and we don't always know how you're going to take it if you've never served. He trusted me. He said, you get this. You understand that I did what I had to do, and it was my job. And this is what we do. And it doesn't make me who I am. And I said, yeah, absolutely, I get that, right? Because I was trained in some of the same. I wasn't a Marine, but I was trained in some of the same stuff, and certainly signed the same dotted line that he signed all those years ago. Um, and so we don't, when we talk about military space with civilians, we're really a little on edge. It's what we talked about the last part of the conversation was going to be how to talk to military folks. Thank you for your service is always kind of interesting and sometimes weird for folks, but generally we appreciate that. What we really like is just asking kind of non-committal questions if you know we're a serviceman. Like, what branch of service? Every one of us will tell you their branch of service and be pretty proud of it. Sorry. I'll say I'm in the Air Force. I have no problems with that. I'll say, what'd you do in the military? Hey, I was aircraft loader. I loaded aircraft on the B-1. Some questions that we get a little nervous about are like, did you like it, or was it all worth it if you were in combat, or the typical answer, did you kill anyone, is always off the table. Even though people ask that, surprisingly enough, people do ask that question. And so when we talking about military, I think really, especially students, and this brings us back to the other point, we want to be treated like anybody else, and want to be in my job. I'm the guy that does veteran and military services, but I'm a student affairs guy. I work for the University of Michigan. That's where my kind of stuff is, right? I'm a family guy. I'm a husband. I'm a father. And so when we talk about our vet space as being, seeing us as people, and asking about kind of us as people, I think, and being genuine. Military, we can sniff out BS pretty quickly. And we usually have we have really a low tolerance for it. And so being very genuine about like, how you doing, is a pretty good question for a vet. How's your classes doing? How are you doing in this space? Anything you need, anything we can help out with, is really good. But being careful on how we out or how we address the veteran part of that, especially in a classroom setting.
Yeah,
Does
it
that
seems like
make
there's a
sense?
very fine line.
I don't want to be too heavy-handed on that, but does that make sense?
I think it makes sense to me. It seems like there's a very fine line between, um, like you said, how a student identifies and whether or not their military identity is what they're wanting to lead with.
Yep. And I have folks
And
who
I'm
are
sure there's,
really, I've had folks
yeah.
who are really rah-rah. So, I mean, I have folks who are, I'll do stereotypical Marine Corps, right? I have folks who are Marine Corps who wear that stuff on their sleeve, man. They're a veteran from like 50 feet away, and they are absolutely with the Marine Corps hat, proud to tell you all that information. And and I have known people who are almost shocked that I know that they're a veteran, and really I have to engage, even because we're serving them, and because I have services, and because we need to know some information. I have had to, like, literally, it's pulling nails trying to get information about their service out of them. Like, they do not want to talk about this.
Hmm. And I'm sure, do you see differences in like the cohorts, each year, a different group, different ages as the students are coming in, younger and younger?
Yes.
I'm sure those trends play a lot in your role too.
There's a big difference right now between we are at the end the tail end of surge in Iraq and Afghanistan. So when you start thinking about post 9/11 GI Bill folks coming in and student veterans coming in, this is a different generation than it was like 5 years ago where we're talking wartime. This is a population that has been, when we talk about deployment, it's usually been peacetime deployment or other kind of deployments. There are still folks out in harm's way. I'm not going to say that there aren't, because there are, but generally folks have been, I stationed in Alaska, or I stationed in Kansas, or I was over in Korea. So it's folks who have been on deployment, but usually kind of like that overseas kind of peacetime footing. So most of our, 90 to 95% of our folks right now have really served in the peacetime military if they've served only 4 years. So that is a big difference. So they are less likely to want to talk about mental health care than the previous generation before them. They are way more interested in how do I get my career going. The military was my stepping stone to get here. The military was a cool little adventure for me and a cool little thing I learned about myself, but it's less of a defining thing than some of our folks who are Afghanistan and Iraq, and just a big difference. They are also less likely to talk about the need or talk about or be dealing with post-traumatic stress or other kind of combat injuries.
Very interesting.
So do we have any other questions? We're about at our time, right?
We are.
Make sure that you guys are okay. So is there any kind of last minute questions you have? I do a whole session on this. Is an hour-long talk. If we want to engage this at some other time, or if we want to do this in the summer, I have a whole hour-long talk about this kind of thank you for your service and what it means and how we can talk to each other. So that is another session that we that I have already kind of spooled up. It is I would say if we could do it, it's better as a face-to-face kind of thing than virtual, because it's engaging and we talk about kind of just communication really. But
well, I don't know how large you'll look at your committee for Veterans Week planning, but if that would, or if there are other ways that advisors could be involved if they wanted to, then certainly let us know. Or now you have our listserv, so feel free to utilize that as a resource. Should you want to reach out to graduate advisors specifically.
Absolutely. I hope this has been, and I am always at your beck and call, really. And so please contact me with any kind of questions that come up with your students. I do that a lot. So I answer kind of any kind of question that you may have that comes up where a student doesn't know or you don't know. Shoot me an email. If I don't know, I will forward. I've got, again, a team of experts who help me out. I am only the conductor of a very large and cool orchestra that knows all of this kind of information. And so I will farm a question out to a resource and an expert and then get the answer back to you pronto.
Sounds great. Thank you so much,
Okay,
Phil.
thank you, everybody. Stay safe out there. Stay healthy. Good luck with all this change and weirdness that we do, and I hope you get some good time on that porch.
Yeah. Yes, I'm ready for summer.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, Phil.
Bye-bye.
Bye.